So I says to the guy, no, I'm just kidding. Blau und Weiß sein Leben lang. Herzlich willkommen zurück auf SchalkeMerica. Let's get into this because we got a lot to talk about. Joining me as always, co-host Jack Mangan. How are we doing, Jack?
I mean, is our stream going to be taken down for the Seinfeld music at the beginning? I guess we'll find out.
It's worth it at this point.
Yeah, but I understand the reference that you're going for there, sir. Eventful few days for our beloved football club. Not particularly good days, despite being eventful, but two encounters with Hoffenheim in the space of a week. Neither of those went well for us, and now the tough questions that we're beginning to be asked of Frank Kramer are probably approaching a fever pitch, and I think his fate's probably going to be decided pretty shortly here.
Yes, so I think in this podcast we're going to talk about obviously the two games as a cumulative, right? We don't need to relive that misery. Talk about ESPN. We can probably start with ESPN and then talk about what needs to happen going forward because Hertha Berlin is coming up on the horizon on Sunday. Overall, through two games, right? The regular season game and the DFB Pokal match, 8-1 in favor of Hoffenheim. Not pretty at all. And I think it started off bad, right? I don't know if you caught the pre-match press conference between Kramer, Schroder, but it was very odd. I don't know. Did you catch it?
I did not. You want to fill me in? You mean like the chemistry between the two of them?
Yeah. So it seemed awkward from the beginning, right? And maybe I'm just reading too much into it. But this is what I noticed when I watched the press conference. And early on, Kramer seems very defensive in the press conference. And then they asked him about the new signing, Kolacek or something like that. I forget the new player. And in the middle of his spiel about him, Schroder like cuts him off, and like Kramer looks over like, okay, what? And then, I guess Schroder didn't like the way the answer was going, and he just answered it for himself. And so the whole press conference seemed kind of off from the get-go. But they kept talking about we need to see attitude. We need to see attitude adjustment because the Leverkusen game was crap. And I agree with that part, right? They said all the right things, but it just felt awkward. Going to the game, 3-0. They say they saw a better reaction. I guess, did you see a better reaction in that game from the Leverkusen? I guess a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one because, still we didn't play well, obviously, overall. So there's a ton to criticize in terms of how that game went. Was it the same kind of performance as the Leverkusen game, despite the scoreline being very similar? I would say no. I think we had way more shots on target in that match, and there we go, pulling it up. Not shots on target, but shots at least. So we were at least finding ways to attempt things on goal. And at times had a couple nice moments. And then the goals themselves, two of them come from penalties, which honestly, that's not Kramer's fault.
Nope.
From like a tactical thing. I mean, like those were both just kind of like freak plays that doesn't really have anything to do with how he's like setting up the team. And then the third goal was right before halftime and, kind of shot through traffic. Shvalov is maybe unsighted, should have done better there as well. But I don't think that goal was even like terribly defended, all things considered. Like on the scale of like some of the goals that you've seen us concede, like there wasn't like that clear of an angle for that to shoot. It was just a great job. I think it was De Boer, right? Had that goal on halftime. Yeah, and he had two more today. So the way they scored, not the most egregious overall. Still a bad performance, but at least I mean, you look at the XG on that screen right there, 3.46.
Yeah, to 0.77.
Yeah, I mean, like 1.5 of that is purely from penalty shots.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like Anyway, it improved, but not to a point that's really worth talking about that deeply.
Yeah, and it improved a little bit, like you said. And then the post-match press conference was like, Schroder didn't attend. Brighton Ryder kind of was like, hey, Schalke did play courageously. We were the better team. Schroder said the same thing. He was just like, we look better in terms of attitude. That's about it. And the big question was, would Kramer stay? And Schroder immediately, like, within the next couple hours or whatever said, yeah, Kramers on the bench, definitely for the game in the Pokal. It's consistency. We'll have a couple days away. Okay, I get it, I guess. And then go into today, and 5-1 is the result. Not pretty at all. Goal started early, consistently all the way through. Drexler got one on the back, but I mean, we just look bad today. It wasn't just like you mentioned it. The first game against them, 2 penalties. One probably shouldn't have been a penalty, and then that goal by De Boer. Today was just ineptitude,
exactly
all the way through.
And that's the thing is, I think you and I had talked about after the Leverkusen game. If we were to go to Hoffenheim and have a similar result, we were expecting Kramer to be fired. I think the reason he wasn't fired, and once again, there could be financial aspects that are in play here in terms of coaching salaries, whatever. Although ultimately we're going to make a move, I think we have to. So I don't really know how much of a consideration that was, but I think the thing that saved them was, once again, even though the scoreline was 3-0. I think it'd be difficult to look at that game and once again put that all on Kramer in terms of like managerial ineptitude, and so that may have given him that extra like week at the helm potentially to kind of get a result or something. Unfortunately, after losing to Hoffenheim, and you've seen them and you kind of know what they're about and they want to do. You would think that it would be like Schalke potentially that would be able to improve relative to Hoffenheim the second time around, as opposed to the other way, because Hoffenheim, had a good start to the season under Brighton, right? Or they're in the top 4, right? Or close to it. Fourth, at this point.
Yeah, I think.
Look pretty competent against us. Then they're just going to kind of keep playing their game, presumably, and mostly just kind of do what they're doing. You would think it'd be Schalke that would tweak some things. And from the get-go, like Angelino had a shot within, I think, a couple minutes that he was just wide open for. They scored, I think, within 5 or 6. Yep. It had 3 before halftime. Added a couple more, comedy errors at the back. One of the goals they scored, I think we had like 8 in the box, and they still just like passed right through us because Yoshida stepped out randomly and put.
And they had a goal taken away because they scored another one, but it was a offside call or interference to the goalkeeper, or whatever.
And listen, like you look at the starting lineup. Schwolov, we never have been a fan of him as a goalkeeper in general.
4.6 rating on Football.
There you go. Whatever. But like haven't been a fan of him since before we signed him, right? So like nothing new on that front, but like. Matriciani, Krall, Yoshida.
What do you expect?
Like what? And this is the problem. When we talked about, I had a tweet earlier in the year. I'm kind of rambling now. I apologize. I had a tweet earlier in the year where I was talking about how, I know the Itakura sale was unpopular, but it was responsible and the right thing to do. I was not expecting that we were also going to get rid of Malik Chow and Ozan Kabak on top. You know what I mean? I was expecting that one of those guys would be retained. That hasn't happened. We've had injury troubles already in those positions to multiple players. We still haven't seen, why is his name escaping me again? Kaminsky, sorry. We still haven't seen Kaminsky in quite a while. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so now we're in this position where you're looking at our back line and that's not a Bundesliga back line. Krall is not exclusively a center back. You know what I mean? Matriciani he's below average level for Bundesliga for a right back. Yoshida, after a couple of decent performances from a composure standpoint and organizational standpoint at the beginning of the season, has fallen off a cliff with the Schalke performances in recent weeks. Oweyan hasn't been himself overall in the course of the season. Donny Latz has barely played. Larson's looked bad, pretty much every time he's come in. Flick has been okay overall, but bad moments from him too. But one of the more consistent players, I guess you'd say, which isn't saying a whole lot. Mullet has barely played. We finally saw him in these previous 2 Hoffenheim matches. I thought actually looked okay in the first one, had some good moments offensively, but and then Terada, you can't do much without the service and more. Talk to me about more, because I was working today. I didn't even see the game. I only saw the highlights. You were watching the game. What was going on with Moore today? Why was he taken off early? What are your thoughts on that?
So my assumption, this is based purely on watching it, is that Kramer didn't like what was going on, period, and just took him out. So originally, this lineup is as it is, but it's not how it actually started. It started with Matriciani and Yoshida at center back, Moore at right back, and Krall in the middle. And as soon as the game started, it went to a back 5 where Krall jumped into the back, and then Moore was exclusively a winger on the right side. And he's a left-footed player, and he did his best on that side, but actually he was going down the pitch, I thought, but I guess they kept getting beat left and right and center. Mostly on Moore's side, and I guess he took it out on Moore and pulled him out of the game. I would have taken out Matriciani, honestly, but just because you got Moore's a little bit of pacey, he's got a left-footed shot. He had a shot before he came out too, but within 30 minutes or so, he got pulled, and Iden comes on and pretty much plays that winger spot. I know here has him as an attacker, but it was really Terodde with Mollet Flick and Larson behind him, and Latza was in like a back to whatever with Krall, and then Krall would jump into the back defense. So defensively, we were a 5-2-3. 5-2-3. And then offensively, it kind of looked like this, I guess. But I didn't understand why Moore came out, other than Kramer was like, we're getting torched. I just need something. And he brought in Iden. I'm happy he had Iden, but Moore was not the guy I would have selected. Unless somebody sees something that I didn't see, I think Moore's taken off was unjustified. Unless there was an injury that I didn't know about. It didn't look like it. He looked pretty pissed off when he got taken out. So
that's what I was asking, is because once again, I didn't see the game today, just some of the highlights, and he looked pretty upset when like the force of which he was slapping players' hands down the bench was some
Kramer
frustration
included.
being, yeah, exactly, some frustration being taken out there. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too harsh here, but like I also thought it was funny that Kramer sent Iden out with a piece of paper with tactical instructions. And I'm like, yes, that piece of paper is going to, you're down 5-0 on aggregate at this point over, 3 halves of football. Surely whatever's written on that paper is going to somehow sort this out, 5 minutes before halftime or whatever it was.
I got it, guys. I got it.
Yeah, it just, I almost kind of wish Kramer hadn't done that for his own sake, because it kind of just seems a little silly. But I don't know. Maybe I'm probably being too harsh there.
I don't remember if it was the second or third goal, but Schroder, I mean, everyone's vividly upset. Schroder gets up and like storms off the bench, and I'm like, he's gonna find a new manager, but he didn't. I think he went to go yell at the referee or something like that. But
I mean, it looks like Kramer's lost the dressing room. Honestly, I mean, this performance, I don't think they showed up today, and I think it might be because it's a DFB Pokal, which you would think that, hey, maybe that's your one shot at silverware. You're going to try for that. I mean, I'm not saying players didn't care, but like, I don't know. It was such a shambles from the beginning. It's hard to believe that like they were really invested in it. I think they're just probably trying to get to the Bundesliga game on the weekend. I don't know. But
and
yeah,
Kramer's
in
2 games. Kramer's in danger. You look at the lineups of 2 games. So like between the 2 games, between the game on Friday and today, Hoffenheim's like, it ain't broke. We're not changing a jack squad. We're gonna keep the exact same squad. And Kramer went with 5 different players. And like we said, they kind of played okay in that game against Hoffenheim. They didn't get results or the right luck, but they had a reaction, and he takes out 5 of those players unnecessarily, maybe, and it showed. I mean, like you said, maybe he lost the locker room, and they absolutely didn't show for him.
I mean, it could also be a freshness thing. I mean, I think it is indisputable that the only important competition for us is the Bundesliga. So I'm not going to be overly critical of them, losing this game in the DFB Pokal.
Yeah.
Even though it is like your one chance to really compete in something, because we're not going to win the league, but
maybe that was the goal too.
No, it's something. It's possible. I don't know how they were approaching it, but like, yeah, even so, even with the squad rotation and everything, it didn't appear to be a particularly strong effort. Like we said, wide open chances occurring within 2 or 3 minutes of the game starting. It's not as if like, they put up a good resistance for 60, 70 minutes, then, got tired and the mental focus started waning, and then they started having gaps. There were gaps from the first whistle in this, which just speaks to, a change, I think, needing to be made at this point. And you listen to some of Kramer's post-game comments, and once again, I apologize, I don't know the full context, whatever, because I don't speak German, but I was seeing some reporters tweeting out his comments after the game, and they seemed to be very vague and just sort of, I'm at a loss. I don't know how, you don't have the passion or the energy. I don't know what to do. That kind of stuff. Worst performance of the season.
Yeah.
These kind of things. I mean, it sounds like a manager who's just kind of in full exasperation mode and probably knows his time is limited, and just kind of being honest about, I don't know how to steer the ship. And once you also start making those comments, there's kind of no way back for you, because you're basically admitting that you don't know how to fix it. And listen, this isn't the best possible squad that Schroder's handed him. We understand the limitations of the squad. And maybe, I was wrong in my estimation about this squad being capable of achieving safety this season.
Me too.
But once again, we've had better performances earlier in the season than we've had the last 4 games or so. And I don't know. I think if we have any chance of rescuing this, we probably need to pull the trigger sooner rather than later.
It's very like the Christian Gross at the end of his time, where the team is just like, nah, I don't care anymore. Jake, you're not the only one. When we saw the lineups, we're like, what's going on here? We kind of just talked about it about 5-10 minutes ago, but looking forward, I think 1 or 2 things need to happen. We can have this discussion here because I'm curious on your thoughts, but I think there's 2 choices here, and only 2 choices going forward. Choice number 1, Kramer's gone. Needs to get out. Get a new manager. I know we don't have the financial capabilities of buying anyone, but Pellegrino Matarazzo, I would take him in a heartbeat. I doubt we can afford him. Obviously, there's Tedesco out there. I don't care. Kramer needs to go, and I hate doing this because I love the guy, Schroder needs to go for negligence, because this is absolute ineptitude by the team. I know they're in a financial situation. They can't afford anything, but we look completely terrible. And all we want is the guys to play hard and look like some resemblance of football so we can go in there and enjoy it. And we haven't seen any of that. Rarely we've seen that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so listen, for me, Schroder has built up a lot of equity and trust with what he did last year. Despite the fact that we had Gramontis as coach and, about 10 games from the end of the season, it looked like we weren't anywhere near promotion. So I understand that kind of rapidly changed at the end and maybe put a slightly more rosy tint on the picture from last season. But I do think overall he did a very good job in sort of rebuilding that squad.
Oh, for sure.
Less so this season, but that was always going to be more of a challenge when you're moving up to a higher level with the kind of, resource limited setup we have at the moment. But I think you and I both questioned his appointment of Kramer to begin with. And I mean, for all the things we've already said, had some decent performances early on. And then, even after the Leverkusen performance, the Hoffenheim performance wasn't as bad. So I can understand kind of playing it week by week and not trying to do something way too premature. But I would agree. I think after the run that we've been on, and then especially this response in this DFB Pokal game midweek against Hoffenheim, I don't know. Even if we were to grind out a result against Hertha Berlin this weekend on Sunday, right, and we were to, let's say we get like a 2-1 win and we look decent, does that really move the needle for you that much?
No.
Based on what you've seen from, I don't think it does. I think we're kind of at the point where it's like we've been seeing too much. There's nothing happening on the offensive end. The defense is calamitous. It's not like we're losing 2-0. With just poor offense. We're losing 4-5-0, multiple times this season. We have a negative 14 goal difference after 10 games. So we're averaging, more than a goal defeat per game.
We've almost given up the same amount of goals as we did all last year.
You would struggle to look at a certain area of the pitch or a certain phase of play at the moment and say, hey, that's something that Schalke appears to be doing competently. And that's like an area that Kramer has us really kind of purring.
Yeah.
It just, anywhere you look on the pitch at the moment, it's just not working out. And, before this thing gets too out of hand, I think, it is probably likely that we need to make a change. You look at the table at the moment and, we're in 17th place, obviously in the relegation zone, but between 17th and 13th, there's 4 points.
Yeah.
Which is to be expected. It's early in the season. So, you get a couple of results here and there, and then suddenly we're right back in sort of the mix of, potentially those deep safety places or whatever. It's not too late by any stretch of the imagination. But if you let this go on until,
exactly
2, 3, 4 more games, we lose most of those. Suddenly the hole's a little bit deeper. We're within touching distance, within one result of 14th place right now, and 2 results of 13th. So.
And we have some big fixtures coming up ahead too. The Hertha Berlin is winnable. We win, we're in 14th position, assuming everybody else loses above us. But you got, I think Bayern's on the horizon, Frankfurt, Mainz is on the horizon, Freiburg, Werder Bremen is on the horizon, I believe. So some big fish to fry here in the next few weeks. And so if we're not looking good now, we're not going to look good then, certainly. And I don't want, I love Schroder. I agree with everything you said about Schroder. I think he's, even if he were to get let go, he'd still go down in Schalke history because what he did last year, fantastic, right? With no money, being able to find a team and get him championship and promoted within the first year. But something has to change, and I'd rather it be Kramer because I want to see what Schroder can do. But I don't know where we go from here. Obviously the names that float up. Asamoah, someone mentioned put Buyo in Asamoah's spot and Asamoah as a manager. I think Joseph said something similar to that too. Whatever. Something needs to happen. It just Kramer, it's not working. And if what you say is true, that potentially the locker room is lost, that's even more reason to get rid of him.
It certainly seems that way, doesn't it? It seems like they have no idea what they're supposed to be doing out there at the moment. It's wildly disorganized, which is not, I don't know. That to me, the fight doesn't seem to be there today for the most part. And their organization has reached a certain point where, we talked earlier in the season, hey, their performances aren't good, but there at least seems to be structure, right?
Yeah.
And so often in the past, we've been watching, Schalke in these relegation campaigns, and we're like, it does. There's nothing discernible happening. It doesn't look as anyone knows how to execute whatever the game plan is supposed to be. In the last couple games, to varying degrees, it's started to look like that.
Yeah.
And that to me just means like they don't. And we also heard that the long ball thing, right? The players were complaining about the long ball situation, which you and I have been talking about for a while. Well, he changed the formation for the first Hoffenheim game and played significantly less long balls, so you could tell that he was like somewhat agree. I mean, listening to that after a while, at least. But
that's how you lose the locker room too, right?
It's
one thing if from the beginning you're listening to your players, you're working together, and you're figuring it out as a team. But if the whole time you're doing it your way, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, let's try it your way, and it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. You could lose the locker room that way.
Yeah, but my bottom line is this. I don't think Schroder's on the chopping block at all. I think he's going to be here through the season. If for some reason we get relegated this year and he goes through a couple managers, maybe things look bad enough where they get rid of him. But like I said, he's built up a lot of equity with what he did last year.
Yeah.
Although the interesting thing I think you and I would probably look back at last year and say like, yeah, and like when things weren't going well, he fired his manager and brought in, Buyo and got it right. But I think the thing is like we actually were critical of how long it took him to make that move.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if he's
Day, not
exactly
April, May.
And it's kind of like revisionist history in my own memory. I'm like, yeah, he fired the coach when he needed to and got it. And like, but no, actually, you and I thought it should have happened a lot earlier. And I wonder if a similar thing's happening now where it's like, Gramatsis he inherited. This is his appointment. So he's staking a little bit more on it in that regard. And that starts to reflect poorly on you as a sporting director. Obviously, if you start going through managers, these are kind of your decisions. So I think maybe for that reason, he was holding on hope a little bit longer as well. To say nothing of, the financial angle and everything else. So, I think this Hertha game, if news doesn't come before this weekend regarding Kramer, if the comments that Schroder made about him having 2 more games on the bench are true and nothing changes, then obviously all eyes will be on the Hertha fixture, and that will clearly be, I think, the decisive one. And Kramer at this point would probably need a pretty spectacular result in that game to avoid the hammer falling, like a comprehensive win with a decently structured performance. It can't just be a draw or whatever. I think even if he gets a draw against Hertha, who are in 15th place at the moment, I think that probably gets him out of there as well. And
this is probably the time to make the move because you give them new guy 5 games and then the winter World Cup break, right? The World Cup break's probably a month long, and so you give them 5 games. See what the team is about, and then figure it out in the month off or whatever. But the next 5 games: at Hertha, home to Freiburg, at Werder, home to Mainz, home to Bayern. We end Bayern, so Bayern's going to give us a bad note going to the World Cup break. But
we play on the 5th, the 9th, and the 12th of November. Like it's so cramped, and then we're off until January.
Yeah.
So it's more than a month. It's almost like it's like 2 months or almost more. But it's going to be off. Anyway, but I don't think we can wait 5 games to make a change. Like I said, unless for some reason things change dramatically this weekend against Hertha, but I don't think any of us see that happening at this point. Tough. And you always feel bad. Like I never feel happy about a coach performing poorly and then potentially losing his job. But you and I weren't high on him from the beginning, and despite a tepid but like, okay, let's see how this goes kind of start, it's fallen off a cliff, and we need to get in front of it before this train is no longer stoppable.
It's within reach. Like you said, it's within reach at the moment. Let's capitalize on that instead of going in the deep hole like we were in the past and then no way to get out of it. I feel bad for Kramer for sure. He seems like a nice guy. Seems like his tactics should work in theory, but it just doesn't work, or the personnel wasn't there. I don't know. It didn't work out. And it was always a weird relationship, right? You're coming in with a coaching staff that's already set. Team's already set pretty much. But still, you got to move on. This is a business, and you got to do what's best for the team. So we'll see. I'd be okay waking up tomorrow to news that Kramer's being fired. Just saying. I'm sure that many people would share the sentiments, including your panelists here.
I think we would agree. The thing is, though, like, I mean, this is the mitigating point in sort of the Kramer criticism is, once again, are you able to pull up the graphic of the starting lineup today?
Yeah. Let's see.
I know you weren't expecting me to ask you that, but this is the point I'm trying to, like, I want to just make is, like, once again, like a mitigating factor. If you look at the starting lineup today, like, look at the back 5 of those players. It's Petriciani, Krall, Yoshida, Oyan, and Schwolo. And then in front of that, it's like Larson, Latza, Flick, Mole. I mean, like that. It's not a good starting 11. It just isn't. Like I think the very best of our team is a little bit better than that. If we have like an ideal starting 11, I still think we have a competent and potentially safety achieving team. I didn't think it was going to be a 9th or 10th place finish. I thought it was probably going to be more like 13th, 14th, something along those lines. Yeah. But I think that's capable of it. But whatever we're playing at the moment, due to availability and other reasons, like that is not a Bundesliga starting 11. So that's the one thing you can say kind of in favor of Kramer and against, whatever hire you bring in is they're going to have to work with the same squad. All we have is a January window. There tends to be less business in January than the summer. And then plus you have the financial strictures on top of that. It's like, what is a new coach going to be able to bring in? And is he going to be able to find a way to kind of coach around the talent that he has at the moment? Because Kramer hasn't been able to do that.
Yeah. It's a tall task for anybody, for sure. I saw a nice debate, not a nice debate, just a couple tweets going back and forth where someone's like, the choice is evident. We need to bring back Tedesco. This is perfect for him. And someone's like, I want to see winning football, not the same crap we just watched, and people forget, us included, we relive the glory that was Tedesco, the second place finish that 1 year, but then also we forget the end of his tenure where he was losing like 7-0, 5-0, 4-0 teams he had no, other than City, no teams he had no right losing to, and kind of lost the team the way Kramer lost it. So yeah, everything's up for debate. I don't know who we can afford, honestly, whether we can afford him or Matarazzo or whomever, or maybe it has to be an eternal move. I don't know.
It's going to be Rice. Let's be honest. Like that's who we can afford, and that's who we're looking at, which is not inspiring either. That's the thing. Is like,
would you take Asamoah over Rice?
No. I mean, listen. I have no idea what Asamoah's coaching credentials are. I don't even know if he has a license to coach. He's a player man. Like he's like a team manager, right? He's not even like he's not like on the coaching staff. I don't think. I would obviously much rather go after somebody who had a job within the past couple weeks than like. No offense to Asamoah. Like I think it's great that we have him on having him like as a part of the club and that deeply embedded with the team. I think you saw that pay dividends, last year, especially down the stretch as well. But yeah, we need like a proper manager in.
Too bad you can't give a contract. So too bad there's not a manager out there with the heart in him where he'll take a fully incentivized contract where you don't take anything up front, but if they stay in the league, then you get the money, right? You prove your worth, and then we'll give you the money. I don't think anyone's going to take that, but it'd be nice to see. At least someone that we would like to see. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, listen, I think all of us would take Tedesco in a heartbeat if for some reason that was going to happen. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but if for some reason it was. But since we're talking about it, but I do agree. I think there has been some revisionist history there as well. I mean, second place, I think any of us would take that regardless because of how bad things have been recently. Like second place seems like, a world away. Yeah. But as we said during that campaign, while it was happening, the offensive football wasn't particularly great. We had 11, 12 set piece goals, like in penalty goals and everything. Like that was making up for a lot of our lack of offensive production. Yeah. We were really defensively organized, great. And like the spirit in that team, the team unity and the chemistry and the fighting spirit is like off the charts. So you have to give Tedesco that. But like there were clearly cracks that were suggesting we probably shouldn't have achieved that second place finish. We didn't address those in the offseason, and then everything fell apart in year 2 under Tedesco, which fell apart more than we expected it to. But that decline, I think, was predicted by us. And I don't know what like a Tedesco would be able to do with the squad either at the moment. Yeah.
Final thoughts before we move on this topic. Matarazzo, would you take him?
I mean, it's SchalkeMerica, right? And technically, there's the American angle there. Yeah. So, no. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, over Thomas Rice, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I
don't think we can afford him.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Rice.
Yeah.
Rice, baby.
Speaking of baby, ESPN. Let's talk about them real quick before we wrap this up because for those in the States got to witness the shit show that was ESPN, at least the English feed. Starting out the game very choppy. I thought it was my phone at first, and ended up checking on my TV, and then I went over to the Spanish feed, and it seemed to work out after a while. The English feed just completely lost. I mean, I don't know anybody else who got their feedback, but Jack, I don't think you got your feedback, right? English feed?
Nope. Yeah, I went down early. And a great shame because friend of the pod, Derek Ray, on the comms today for ESPN for this DFB Pokal match. I would have loved to hear his call of the game, but unfortunately it was only the Spanish stream that was that was working. Now, as a polyglot, that's no problem for a man of your considerable talents, linguistic talents. But for the rest of us, embarrassing, solo language speakers, it was great disappointment
I like that.
To not be able to hear Derek Ray on the call. But
yeah, that was the one downside, is that you don't get to hear Derek Ray, and I love listening to him talk. It's just like poetry, right? But yeah, the ESPN feed seems to always crap out. Not always. It happens a lot, more often than it should. Luckily, the Spanish feed is working. So normally in these situations, you think it's the same feed, it should work the same, but it didn't in this case, which I'm happy for, because the Spanish feed was good. But yeah, ESPN's got to do better about that. And it's not just this. I've seen it with hockey games and other things too, where it's just like, just doesn't get the feed sometimes, and it's frustrating. Though I will note about the Spanish commentaries that they also mentioned how disorganized we looked and inept we looked in the game. So, but that's here or there.
And you would know that because you speak Spanish.
There you go. There you go.
There it is.
All right, next game, Hertha. I honestly have no idea how this next game's going to go, because one, I don't know if the manager's going to be the same, and then two, I don't know what team's going to show up. Is it a team that's going to show that they care, or what we saw here at Hoffenheim tonight? I would bet on, if nothing changes, a team similar to what we see tonight. But I don't know. I don't know what to make this Hertha Berlin match. It is of the next 5 games, it's the most winnable.
I don't anticipate anything changing significantly, but unless something does change, the result on Sunday might hurt a lot. So that's a play on words. There you go. And to Jake's comment, yes, FIFA Pro Clubs commentated by Derek Ray. And yes, I have a pretty good Derek Ray impression that I'm working on at the moment, so maybe I'll unveil that later in the season.
Oh, snap.
It's supposed to be a great compliment to Derek. He's fantastic, but I don't know, maybe he'd be offended.
We should have him on and find out.
Yeah, I'll do the impression too, Derek. Yeah, that's right. There you go.
Alrighty then. I don't know. I got nothing else. I'm kind of more pissed off of what I've been seeing the last couple, well, definitely last 2 games, but overall the last 4 or 5 games or so. So I don't know.
Quick shout out to Ozan Kabak for not celebrating after scoring on us.
Yeah.
The curse of the former player strikes again.
Knew it was going to happen.
Had an assist as well, if you recall.
Yeah.
I think that was their first goal, maybe.
You might be right.
It might have been right. Crawl just atrocious on that play. Lets the pass in initially, and then gets deep. Absolutely burned on the cutback.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, not good. But shout out to Kabak. Always appreciate when people don't do the selling and everything. So
yeah, especially to us. Shout outs. Or someone's gonna shout out, but I don't remember anymore. So anyway, shout out to all the Schalke supporters out there who are going through this together with us. Yeah, I got nothing else really.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, 2 games, 8-1 in aggregate. We don't need to go in more detail than that. I'm glad I didn't watch the game today. I'm glad I was spared from that. And just try to reset for Sunday and see what happens. Because I think the rest of our season is going to be strongly linked to the outcome of that game.
I couldn't agree 100% more, and I wish I wasn't. All right, let's wrap this one up. Jack, where can our followers find you on social media?
At JMMangan, JMMangan on Twitter. Stumbled last time.
Nice rebound.
Back in form now on the Twitter handle.
You can follow me at R_KHARMAN. And next game is on Sunday against Hertha Berlin. Must win if there ever was one. All right. For Jack, I'm Richard. Catch you soon. Glück auf.